Hi, we're live.
Hi, how's it going, guys? Back here again this week in this lovely room with the great coloring that we've got at the WIUR studio for the last time. This is the final Hotheads episode, the last frontier, the final blow up, as James has put it. Obviously, Teodora
And-
Mitov,
Hi.
the first chair, assistant
Oh,
producer,
wow.
and I, Jack Mollahan, second chair, executive producer of the
Uh-huh.
show. As Teodora has so rightly given me the title, I feel very honored, Teodora, that you would bestow this title of executive producer on me. and
Everybody, please look at the description.
it's truly an honor.
Yeah,
You know,
truly such an honor.
it was rather clandestine that you put this title on me, and
Clementines.
clandestine, not Clementine. We'll keep going. So it's I take a lot of pride in that, and I thank you very much for bestowing this honor
You're
upon
so
me,
welcome.
and
Anything
really
for
you getting
you.
in the booth with me every week for now. What is this, a year that we've been doing this? It's at
It's
least
a
2
year.
semesters, so we'll
No,
give it a
yeah.
year. We'll count the summer.
We'll
And
count the summer.
of
Hey,
just,
I made a really dope show open over the summer.
I think you should. I think we should have started with the show opener, even though it said WICR and not WIUR.
Yeah.
And James is nodding his head. No,
Nah,
he's
shaking
correct.
his head now.
Yeah, I know. It's the U now, not the C.
Well, if anybody does want to hear it, it's up on my
She's gonna post it on her
YouTube.
Instagram, her YouTube,
It's
and her
on-
LinkedIn.
It's on my YouTube.
Follow Teodora on LinkedIn. It's Teodora Mitov.
Slay.
All the
Hey,
yeah.
honestly, add that now before I'm famous and don't add you back.
Well,
I'm
I
kidding.
still feel like
I'm
even
totally
if you
kidding.
got famous, you would spend the whole day like accept on, because you'd be like,
I'm
I
barely
have
ever
to
on
fulfill. They're asking, they want to connect.
The people want to see me. The people want to hear me.
The people need to see Teodora Mitov on LinkedIn.
No, I'm barely even on it today. I barely ever post. I have one post, and that was when I accepted my internship because I was really excited.
Which, by the way, you're repping some internship stuff
Oh,
today.
yeah,
You got your
I am.
Paramount hat on. It's just
Yeah.
a big look. This is a very adult media entertainment mogul status. Like, I don't know. Are you
Yes,
going to go out
sir.
on a Gary Vee speech here about, I don't know.
You know, Bob Backish once said.
Oh, no.
I'm kidding.
Oh, gosh.
Bob Backish is the CEO of Paramount.
He would.
I got to meet him. He is a wonderful man.
Is he part of the deep state, Teodora?
He is the CEO of Paramount, and he is a wonderful man.
But do you think he's a part of the deep state? Yes
Jack,
or no?
what are you doing?
Simple questions
What
here.
is this?
Yes or no? We
What
need people
is
to hold
this?
this against you in the
I feel
future.
like I'm being pushed into a corner.
No. Deep
You
state or
just
no
said you
deep
want
state?
people to push. Hey, Clover.
So, like,
Shout out to Clover. Clover's waving at Jack. Bye, Clover.
but okay, Bob Backish, deep state or no deep state?
What is your definition of deep state?
Apply your own definition here, Teodora. Whichever way you want to go. I'll give you cover for this. 5 years from now, you're running your own show on, I don't know, CBS.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Paramount owns CBS.
Did you actually mean that, like, Bob Backish was in the deep state, or
what
was
I
in the
will
deep
say
state?
is I met Bob Backish and I love Bob Backish. So
classic media mogul agent. No answer.
If you need me to run your PR, please hit me up. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I don't really see myself going into PR. But
before we get started in the show, I do want to say your handoff just there of like avoiding actually answering the question was golden. I had one my own last week, and I feel I need to offer this to the viewer. I was in a job interview, and I was asked a very simple question by some very nice people. They go, okay, like, you're going to have to be dealing with budgets and analysis of certain things. How good is your math skills? So I was like, my math skills, they're a little rusty, but they're there. They still exist. I can still count. And I was trying to be as honest enough forward. And they said, well, I have a quick question for you. Like, let's say that you're at the store, going shopping, and you see that an item is 15% off. Do you think you can do that math in your head?
Oof.
And I was like thinking to myself for a second. And this is my response. I kid you not. I said this to these people. This is a professional job interview at like a very big institution. And I go, well, I'll be honest with you. I mostly buy store brand products. So, there's nothing that's 15% off. All 7 of the interviewers that are there start giggling and laughing. the guy who offered he goes, all right, that's all right. Like he didn't press the subject. He seemed like, like it was a good enough response.
If anything, you'd definitely be the personality hire, and so you
oh,
just
100%. Whatever job or institution I go to next, I am the personality hire. And they all giggled at it, and then it just never came up again. And I was like, thank you. Like I don't know. I wasn't gonna like. I don't know. I can if it's low enough, but I mean, like, how low are we talking about here? So I don't know.
I'd say 50%
That's some good advice,
of my
though.
head.
Don't let them pin you in a corner, even in a job interview. Okay?
Listen, my parents
Flip the script.
We would be anywhere, and they would be like, "Do this math in your head." For the life of me, I'm sorry. I have a calculator on my phone. I will do it, and I will get the answer within a minute. But it will not be in
calculators
my head.
are great.
That's what I'm saying. I'm always gonna have my phone on me. When am I ever gonna not have my phone on me?
I think their goal or objective was like making sure, because I understand if I was dealing with someone dealing with a budget, like I'd like somebody to know that. Yeah.
Oh, well,
it's
to
check in case Excel's wrong or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's reasonable. But I mean, my mom used to, we had to play Monopoly to learn math. My mom was like, "You're gonna play Monopoly, and you're gonna be the banker." And I was like, "I'm gonna be the banker. You're gonna be the banker. And you have to deal with the money." I'd be like, "Oh, well, this is tough math.
Tough math.
I have to do 500 bills. They make bills that high, 500. Whoa. That's why Monopoly always took so long in our family.
Oh, really?
Because I had to dish out the money. No, but yeah, I mean, so I just wanted to offer that as a for the viewer.
Some life advice.
Advice based on that.
How to not answer questions.
How to not answer questions. And this is a perfect segue of not answering what people are looking for. We're going to be talking about the railroad strike today.
That was a good.
Yeah, boom. You see
Maybe you are the executive producer.
I am. Listen, through and through.
Look at the smile on his face.
What can I say? Executive producer Mollahan.
Oh, man. Maybe you picked the wrong major. Maybe you should go into production.
Yeah, Rupert Murdoch would love me. So we're going to be talking about but there was a potential railroad strike. It has since been railroaded. It's
you
not.
Think you're on a roll right now.
I am on a
you?
roll, and I'm going to keep this going for as long as possible. So it's not happening anymore. There's a lot of upset, particularly amongst.
It fully isn't happening anymore.
Well, they can't go strike.
Well, yeah,
they've gotten their contract. Because Congress,
but people are still mad though.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
it sounded like it was over, and I'm like, it's very much not
well,
over.
here's the thing. All right, so the railroad unions are joined up of 12 individual unions.
Yeah.
And 30 railroad companies.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of groups that have to come together and agree on a collective, because they kind of form a joint group. Where you have your signalmen, and then you also have whoever are your operators. There's a bunch of different groups that are coming across to deal with the entire train system in the United States. It's largely commercial goods. It's not people. So you got 12 unions that make up a lot of different things, and the railroad industry is a big industry. I mean, you need everything from a firefighter to a mechanic to a guy who can do spreadsheets and stuff and make sure that this stuff's working, obviously under a different bargaining group, I believe. But
and
you
some
also
of them who can do 15% off in their head.
Yeah, 15% off in their head. They need to make sure if we take 15% off, how many cars are we losing here? They have some serious mathematicians there. I should definitely apply. I'm sure they'd love me. So originally, this has been going on for 3 years, which I did not know. And that goes to show how much we are not focused on unions specifically and labor and as a whole. Because I mean, labor, I think the big takeaway for me from this whole thing is pay attention to labor movements. The last publicized labor movement that we saw was the Amazon issue of trying to take the, I think it wasn't drivers who got unionized. I believe it was just in-house people who got unionized. And that was just in 4 buildings that they have, or 4. I don't know if they refer to them as buildings or centers or whatever. So they do center by center. And that was the last big labor movement. Which
and honestly, arguably the only I think we did, especially last year. And I think one of the only reasons why that even happened was just because of COVID, the whole movement. I think it exposed a lot of flaws in the system, and then that's why that's why it ended up gaining so much.
Well, there has been a
momentum.
lot of momentum with labor because of meat packing issues. There was all those meat packing plants.
Uptown Sinclair.
Yeah, bring him back. There was all those there was all those big there were slaughterhouse problems where you had these communities which were attempting to get unionized. People were pushing for unionization of them, and there was a lot of pushback in the community because most of the time they're immigrant populations. They're scared about being deported even if they're here legally. Like there's a lot of this like vagueness because they're here on work visas or something. There is an element of it where there's so much uncertainty and fear in that industry. And I think that was a big thing that I heard a lot about because the meat supply, we were going on a meat shortage, it looked like, for a little bit, especially with chicken, a lot of poultry items. So that's where it surfaced, but it really blew up, especially over the Amazon thing, not just because of the COVID issue, though. Although there was that big problem of like them being declared essential workers, but half of what they were packing were unessential items.
Yeah, and then like not being able to take a day off if they don't come into work, they get fired. Like
well, that was the other
livelihoods.
Thing, is it also eventually during that process their process of who stays employed at Amazon got exposed because they saw that when you first started Amazon, you're getting your training for your first couple of months, but people who are performing at their peak, I think, was between the 3 to 9 month ratio, and anyone who they had over a year, they saw a decrease in productivity, so they would immediately start blanket firing people after they were in for like a year and a half at Amazon, which became a really hot button issue because it's people, they're working and now they're getting fired for it. And that was also due to burnout because they couldn't take bathroom breaks when they were on because they're getting timed.
Imagine that. That's wild.
It's a strange situation. But anyway, back to the point. They have this big labor movement. 8 out of the 12 unions agreed to it. 4 were against it, obviously. And they basically walk away with the fight is over increased pay. So it's 25% increase in pay, I believe, over 5 years. That this increase will go in. So it's either 4 or 5 years. I don't remember. The journal, I closed the the Wall Street Journal that I had open that gave me that info. But then the big problem that they're having is the paid sick leave. Which is becoming a very big issue, and that the Senate was highly contested. And I have to say, this might turn into a very big philosophy conversation that we end up having, and we probably will go that route. That Nancy Pelosi is in Congress, and she introduces both bills, the one for the increased pay for them to get passed, which is agreed upon. They want increased pay, and then a separate bill for paid sick leave, for 7 days paid sick leave. The bill for increased pay goes through the House and the Senate. Paid sick leave dies on the Senate floor. I believe it gets voted down. So now it kind of becomes this issue where you have a union whose whole purpose is to try to be an equal negotiator with a large institution to fairly balance and support all of its members, rather than one individual versus John. They want a fair fight, not a David versus Goliath situation. And now 4 of these 12 unions, which are part of the collective negotiating group, are kind of left out. But it still doesn't change the fact that 12 unions still don't have paid sick leave just for 7 days. So, I'm curious to hear your take on that, on what the approach should be. But I mean, I see that it's very interesting that, the government's willing to let them take a 25% pay bump, but they're not willing to do paid sick leave. And I was looking at some of this other stuff too, that the corporations were trying to get through these railroad groups. And they wanted to start decreasing train conductor groups, or train operator groups. Usually they work in teams of 2, but they're trying to get it passed to work in teams of 1, so that way they can double. Obviously, it works logistically because now you can double your group with, you have more trains running by themselves instead of having 2 people. It's 1 person. So maybe in the future, if it runs down, you can start to dwindle down your staff too.
I was gonna say you could, by decreasing like the staff that you have on, you could also
but it builds your logistics anyway and your speed for transporting items, because now if you, instead of having 2 people on 1 train running that 1 train, now you have 1 guy running 1 train, he's by himself. You can run a second train with this other person who's a train operator. So it helps out in some essence.
But then it's also like, then are you just getting rid of jobs instead of like, on that sense, because then now if you're going to take like a 2-person job and you're going to make it a 1-person job, and then now like how how effective would that be and like what the actual problem is? Because if their problem is like, hey, like we want pay, like we want to be able to take off work when we're sick, and we want to be able to not have to, because aren't they on like a 24-hour like on call notice where like if you're called into work, like you have to be there in 24 hours, if not you're fired. Like that's like,
I'm not sure if they have a 24-hour on call thing. I would not be surprised if they work 12-hour shifts.
yeah,
because the trains run 24/7. They don't stop. There is no stopping in the train industry. Railroads, they need to. And I also know that for certain chemicals and other things like that, they need to run on different schedules because there is a risk if they get exposed or other things like that.
But yeah, but continue on like that point. Whatever. Like if you have like what traditionally used to be a 2-person job, right? And then now you're gonna take one person off. What's gonna stop them from just being like, oh, now that we realize we could just do it with one person, let's just like reduce our employees by half.
Yeah, well, that's
and
the
then
thing.
and then like you're in a problem. You still have the same problem you just had, and then you have people like 50% of the company out of work.
Well, I mean, on top of it too, right? Like, let's say, well, that's the other risk with automation, right? That's a huge debate that I know. What's his name? He ran for mayor. Before he ran for mayor, he ran for president. He was like a multi-billionaire. I forget his name.
Bloomberg.
No, not Bloomberg. Is Bloomberg even a billionaire?
I believe so.
I don't know.
I would say he was.
Let me see if I can find him.
But he ran for.
But he ran for president
in
on the Democratic ticket. Yeah, 2020. Yeah. Or no.
Oh. Was a mayor?
No, he then ran for mayor of New York City.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking
about? Yes.
I forget his name.
No, I know it. Like you just have to.
I'll give it to you. It's not Eric Adams.
It's not Eric Adams. I literally know. It's like right there. Just give me like 2 minutes. No.
Do you want to time it?
Yeah, no, I'm going to.
You're gonna find it? Okay.
I'm going to find it right now. No, I'm going.
But I do remember, I believe he had an argument, or maybe it was someone else, that automation is inevitable and we shouldn't look away from it. Andrew Yang.
I remembered Yang, but I couldn't remember his first name.
Let's go Yang Gang. So he argued. Thank you for your fist bump, James. He was arguing for a universal basic income.
What is he now? He's no longer a Democrat now.
I think he's just an independent. I think he was always an independent, but he ran on the Democratic ticket. I think he ran for mayor of New York on the independent ticket as well.
You think so? I thought he ran.
He might have ran Democrat, but he lost to Adams no matter what. Like,
well, yeah.
I don't even think the Republican candidate for the mayor of New York City got like 100,000 votes. Maybe they just got Staten Island.
Is it surprising?
Yeah, they just got Staten Island.
Yeah. Staten Island.
Yes. But Andrew Yang ran, and his big idea was doing this universal basic income thing because he thought automation was bound to happen. It was inevitable in his essence.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but what I am saying is it makes a little bit of sense, especially when you see some of this area, because you have a right to be skeptical, especially like the workers have a right to be skeptical with this rotation from a 2 staff to 1 staff, right? Because on top of it, like let's say that it would be one thing for them to transition from 2 staff to 1 staff and then say, we're going to give you paid sick leave because our issue beforehand was now we're going to be understaffed and we're not going to be able to service our requirements or meet our deadlines and our logistical layouts and all these other requirements that we have. But if we divide our work strategy, we can meet that. And then we can offer these paid sick leaves because now we have gap space. But you're also right too, because now it's like, well, if you didn't care about it before, and now you're saying you care about it now, okay. So now you're asking us to trust you that you're going to continue caring about it, even when your bottom line might falter. Because now, I mean, it's no surprise, but companies do it all the time. If you notice, if a company is coming up on a year, on their fiscal year to see how they turn out, they try to drop some of their spending to make up for the things, which means that they lay people off who are contractors for them, who are employees for them. They do buyouts, right? So if someone has 20 years at the company or 30 and they look like they're about to go retire, now they're going to start offering buyouts, to them for their time to try to get rid of them, to reduce costs. It's a reasonable thing, and I can't say, I'm not sure how this is going to go for the unions. I do not think they are striking, but I'm also curious to see.
Would you be surprised if they strike again?
No, no, not at all. I would not be surprised. I mean, they very much want a profit sharing initiative, which I think would be very interesting to see how 12 unions are able to argue with 30 railroad companies to instill a profit sharing focus. I also think it's very interesting how Warren Buffett is kind of at the center of this in some ways, or was before Joe Biden took over that position, because he has massive. I know Berkshire Hathaway has massive investments in different like railroad companies, like railroad holding companies. And it's always very funny when you see billionaires who are kind of like praised by the media because he's like giving away all his money. And now they're kind of like taking a neutral stance, even though he is in some ways a little anti-labor. And then it just kind of is like this weird positioning of politics and media where like you have this one group where it's like, oh, we're so like same thing as with the FTX thing, but we're not going to talk about that data. It's too complex. And it's just my brain hurts from like listening to Sam Bankman-Fried. So like where it's like, oh, this guy, yes, he's a billionaire. So like immediately we want to like devalue him as a bad person because he makes money off of the backs of the working people. But he says he's going to donate all his money. So he's kind of more like cool billionaire, you know? Like he's like Elon if he had a heart, you know? He's hip, you know? He's doing
like
the right
Bill
thing.
And Melinda Gates.
He's like Bill and Melinda Gates. Oh. So now you have
if you had to
person.
be a billionaire, be that billionaire.
Please
if
don't.
If you had
the
burden of being a billionaire.
Please. Oh my God. Please don't be be you. Okay? Be you.
Are you telling people not to be a billionaire?
I'm telling like people to be themselves. I don't be Bill and Melinda Gates. One is enough. No, but so like, you know, it has this, there's a positive spin to it. Maybe he has a good PR team. I would hope he has a good PR team.
Most people do.
I don't.
That's why you haven't called me yet to be your PR manager. So then you will.
I'm the executive producer. I have to keep my own PR.
In which case, if you were to tell me about your PR, the first thing that would be taken off of like your agenda would be this show. So it's so bad for your PR.
It's terrible for my PR. If I ever try to get a job anywhere in the next 10 to 15 years and all of a sudden Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway are running the world, they're going to have some thoughts about
They're going to be like, so what do you know about hotheads?
Yeah. So could you tell us what you were doing when you were 22 around, I don't know, Wednesday, December 7th? Did you make any comments or anything that might be, you know, a little flagrant? No, but he's at the core of this, and his big push was to not, he felt that, you know, paid sick leave was not really, he wasn't really pro paid sick leave. But it's just a very strange situation to where it's like you have groups that are, in theory, super supportive of labor, but then they run into this like crossroads where it's like, oh, we're super supportive of labor. We're also trying to be like pro cool billionaire. But now they're like clashing. So it's like, which side do we pick? And it's always, that's just where it seems very funny to me. I don't know. Maybe someone should write a senior thesis about the effects of media on society.
You know, maybe they should. Maybe
stay tuned. Stay tuned. We're gonna publish it.
I actually did write my senior thesis on that, and it is finished.
Oh, publish it.
So, do you think so?
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about it. Not gonna lie, but I would change up some things because I did write it very quickly.
So. Do you have any comments to say about this? Do you have any?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think it's very unfortunate that the whole thing is happening. I think it's also very disappointing on like the Senate's end for not, you know, passing that the paid sick leave. I feel like that's just very sad. And I think it should have passed. I don't know. I feel like I hope they could figure it out one day, you know?
Yeah, well, eventually, maybe someday. I still think it's very interesting how I believe senators do get paid sick leave themselves.
Oh, do you think so?
I would guess. One could assume.
One would assume.
One could assume. And I'm going to go on the assumption that they do get paid sick leave. And if they do get paid sick leave, it seems a bit unfair how
a bit hypocritical,
that an elected official will allow to provide themselves paid sick leave.
Yet not do the same.
Not do the same for a union of 60,000 people.
Yep.
Right? That cross the entire country and are part of most of them, if directly and indirectly, their entire base, not even base, but just groups of people that they have to help support, right? Their constituency. So,
and people were saying that with like the strikes that were going on, like our economy could have
it could have collapsed.
fully collapsed if like, so I don't know. I just think it's interesting that they would take that approach. And
listen, if there are industries that people seem to forget are important, right? Truck drivers, there's not many.
that is true.
Truck drivers are super important. I don't know how active their union is anymore. I know they kind of got gutted, but they still possess, like, if it doesn't get here by a train, it gets here by a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, they're incredibly important, because that's how we move everything around. That's our infrastructure right now. And on top of it too, it seems very strange that the government has decided to weigh in and be the final decider. I get the narrative that they kind of did it, from what I saw, was Joe Biden did it as, this is, commerce, and the federal government is entitled to deal with commerce, right? That's their basis, their foundational support system for, we need to prevent a failure in international commerce, or in interstate commerce. So it's constitutionally viable that they would do this, but it still seems a little bit morally objective that their decision has to not support the little guy in this situation. Now, I'm not saying that they should have been, gut the system, but 7 days of paid sick leave, it would have been a very interesting thing if they had allowed it. I think that it would have been a lot better if they had. Or better yet, instead of 7 days paid sick leave, give them 7 extra vacation days, right? You don't have to offer them paid sick. Listen, we're going to give you 7 paid vacation days where, you kind of have to have this, short notice isn't really as much of an advantage for you, but at least now you have 7 extra days that you can kind of fraction out a little bit. I don't know if that was an option or a talking point, but
I don't know. I still feel like the sick days are doable. You know what I mean? Like, it's what's the reason not to? I feel like that's the biggest.
I think the big reason for the 30 companies not wanting to was the infrastructure that needs to exist for them to have paid sick leave, right? We're talking about crews of, it's 60,000 people nationwide.
Yeah.
To haul millions of, just a lot of freight, right? With every day, they're doing this every day. I'm wondering if over the years, if these railroad industries have lowered their labor force, and that's why they can't bring in the paid sick leave option, because they don't have people to fill these positions in. They don't have they're working, I would guess that they're working on minimal crews, which is more of the reason why they want to move to the 1 driver instead of 2 driver teams, right? They're working with minimal crews because they get the job done. But you don't have any cushion. There's no cushion. An analogy that might be possible is if you're running a store, you might hire 1 or 2 extra people, because now, well, if one of your other guys is out, then they kind of just fill in. You can run a store with 4 people, but do you really want to run a store with 4 people?
Or like a freelancer,
Yeah, like a freelancer. Yeah, okay.
Like someone that comes in, and plays a huge role to the company.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Yeah.
When my autobiography comes out, well, I'll know.
Is it going to be self-titled freelancer?
No, actually, no.
Sam Bankman-Fried fangirl?
Started. No, I don't know.
We'll talk about this off air.
Yeah.
We can come up with something. We'll get a few marketing majors in here. Maybe they'll help you come up with a slogan. But it's still government philosophically wise, it sits very strange with me, because just because the government can get involved in something doesn't mean it automatically should get involved in something. And on top of it too, this has been going on for 3 years.
It's a very libertarian approach.
Well, if I may, it's been going on for 3 years that they've been going without a contract.
Yeah.
If it was this important to the government right now, and even before labor strike, right? If it was this important and railroad workers are this important to them, why didn't they get involved after a year?
kickbacks.
Right? Why didn't they get involved before, when clearly there was a breakdown in communication between the unions and the companies?
Do you think that like presidential administrations have anything to do with that?
It could, but I would be very I what I personally believe is that if there was an administration that would have made a push to get involved, it would most likely have been Donald Trump's. And I'm curious to see.
They didn't get involved.
They didn't get involved. But I don't think it's in the sense of how Joe Biden got involved.
Mhm.
I think it's more in the sense of how he would have been more vocal about support for them. I mean, Donald Trump went out of his way. He was pro coal because he wanted to put coal miners back to work, right? He was pro truck driver and all these other things, these very working class jobs that are essential to the maintenance of American society. And I'm a little now learning about the situation, not knowing a whole lot before, not knowing a whole lot now still, because I'm not sitting in these union halls hearing these people talk about what actually matters to them wherever they are, but also understanding that, like, I'm a little surprised that a group like Donald Trump didn't do this in some way, but or at least attempt to make a motion forward to do something about it. I mean, it was his last year that this would have started too. So I mean,
no, if it was 3 years ago, it would have been
would
actually, yeah, no.
Yeah, it would have been his last year anyway. So there's not a whole lot that he could have. I mean, he's campaigning, but it is very interesting to me that Joe Biden, didn't do anything last year. Maybe 2 years seems like a long haul. I also know that in the grand scope, when it comes to labor relations, there's a good example of how things could be done a little bit better is how towns and states negotiate with, state employee collective bargaining groups, and how they kind of have like a requirement that you have to meet a deadline and it has to be at a certain pace. And, and if they don't, then the state gets involved and they assign a special group to deal with the like chopping up the next contract. But I'm wondering if maybe this is going to be, the next push in how to really try to change the current law or the view of the current law, because I have no problem saying this now, but labor is something that's going to be getting fought over. I mean, politically wise. And
in what sense do you mean?
In the sense that, so previously labor was pretty much controlled by the Democratic Party, right? They were pro labor through and through. In theory, of course. I mean, Bobby Kennedy did, and JFK did kind of go after the truck drivers, or the Teamsters, I should say. But that was their mob sentiment and a few other things. But in theory, the Democrats have always tried to push a pro-union agenda. That has been a thing. My grandfather was a union man of Con Ed. He is a registered Democrat. Like, he's always, he still supports the Democratic Party. But there's other things where it's like, that is a traditional path.
Yeah.
However, and unions by far, discarding police and fire unions a lot of time, a lot of the emergency services, which are more conservative and Republican in essence, most of them support a lot of the Democratic candidates. That's why, like, in the state of New York, there's the Working Families Party.
Yeah.
Who do they support always? They always support the Democratic candidate, So, I mean, it's going to be very interesting. And I think people like Senator Ted Cruz and others who supported, the railroad workers in some ways. I'm not sure how much or to what extent, but was very vocal about his support for them. It's gonna be very interesting because I think, the coal miners was a big switch. They all, they supported Trump in a lot of ways. And I paid attention a little bit to that, about how this like traditionally voting Democratic bloc is now kind of in the throw, and there is a big look that the Republicans are the party of the working guy now.
So would this alter your predictions for 2024 from last week?
No. I'm still pretty solid in my predictions for last week. I do think this will be. I shouldn't say I think. I hope this is a bigger issue in the next election.
Moving forward,
moving forward, I think we have to move away from this idea of like billionaire bad guy is what we need to talk about, because the reality is nothing's going to get done about the billionaire bad guy because he's donating to both parties, right? So if money remains in politics, it can't be that. What we have to focus on is how is the president of the United States, members of the House and Senate, how are they going to help the working guy who is exponentially more important than, I have no problem saying this, them themselves, right? They're not hauling grain across the US. They're not, making sure that building supplies get delivered to the right place at the right train yard, at the right depot, at whatever. They're not maintaining necessary infrastructure, and they're not serving the people in the same way that these people are. These people have a direct impact, a direct and immediate impact. If I'm kind of hesitant to say that Washington, D.C. has the same direct and immediate impact. I mean, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I think that maybe they should start caring a little bit more about, how some of this infrastructure is maintained and handled and who's working that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this, Teodora? You've been very quiet. You've been very...
I have been very quiet.
You've been very coy about this whole thing. You seem very torn. You seem like you want to go in a pro-capitalist rant right now.
You are so interesting and so funny. Have you ever thought about comedy potentially?
I think my place is here in the booth.
Oh, here in the executive producing.
Producing. Being the executive.
being the exec, I could see you there. So maybe potentially run, make me your press secretary. Actually, don't make me your press secretary, because they always have the roughest
hard questions. Yeah.
No, they have the hardest job because that's a different story for a different day. But the press secretary is essentially just like how presidents don't get like torn apart for like what their policies are and what they believe, and then so they just go, oh, that's not my policy, that's just what they said. But then when it's a good thing, then it's like, oh yeah, that's what I said. But anyways, no, I do see it becoming a bigger issue in the future. I feel like they will go on a strike again. I feel
do you think
like
it would be a successful strike though?
I think it would be.
Yeah.
Because no, I think.
Do you think it would be an active
anyone
strike?
Who would have a what strike?
An active strike where they actually strike, because they were just calling for.
Yeah, they were calling for. I think they genuinely will, and
Mm-hmm.
I think they should, so that they could actually get people to respond to a lot more. It would be catastrophic to our economy.
Oh yeah.
And I think that would be. They know that they have the potential to get an outcome out of that.
Yeah.
If they go that far. And I don't think that they want to do that, because I don't think they want to see the the economy like tank like that. But I honestly think that that's probably the only way that they're going to get the results that they want / need, and that are totally fine. Like there's no reason as to why they shouldn't be getting the paid 7 days the week sick days. So I feel like in that sense, I think they should. I do see that they would end up doing it probably within the next year. I feel like it's probably going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I do see it becoming a bigger issue. I also feel like other labor strikes are going to continue. I know this summer there's been so many in Starbucks. So right now, I feel like it's just the time for a lot of labor unions that are being vocal about their the people that are within their union. And I don't know. I feel like COVID had a huge role in a lot of them. So yeah.
Now I have a question for you. I don't know how much you followed that the yellow vest protests in France, where it was massive protests. I think it was in regards to some of the things in the Paris Climate Agreement, but it was just the gradual increase of petrol in France, and a lot of the working class folks, they rely on that for their job, whether they're independent contractors or whatever, however it went. But there was problems where now it was cutting into their ability to travel and get to work. And there was this big movement, not necessarily labor related from what I remember reading, but it involved people who were involved in labor, right? Like these are labor workers.
Like an environmental thing? Or?
Well, it was less of an environment. So the law was passed for environmental reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who it was negatively affecting were those who were working class people, right? Yeah. I mean, this is a limit, a ban, or not even an imposed tax or fee or fine for petroleum and increasing petrol for them, right? So I mean, now they can't get gas or diesel for as cheap as they might have before. Do you foresee any of these possible issues coming out in the 2024 election right before, because I'll be honest with you, their contract is up in 2024. The railroad union, this only covers them in 2024. They start going back to contract negotiations again.
So hold on, what's the question? Do
you see some of these economic, like any potential bills or legislation coming down that are going to affect labor in similar ways that paid sick leave might? But do you foresee anything that might get as big as like a yellow vest protest?
Probably.
Yeah.
I feel like right now, like in terms of labor, haven't had honestly media coverage of labor unions and strikes that are going on has not been like this high. So I feel like.
Do you think it's high as it should be now already?
Honestly, I feel like there is obviously like room for like more coverage of it, because I feel like it's not like as, especially like, you know, the railroads and stuff, it's not being talked about as much as it probably should be, but I feel like it is high for more than like what we've seen. When was the last time you heard of like labor unions all that much? Like you heard about Starbucks over the summer.
Yeah.
But then before that, like what are you hearing about?
It was before Amazon. There was a few things with teachers in the Midwest. Oh, airlines.
Oh yeah.
Airline unions. That was the big thing, because
honestly,
that was a problem.
Yeah.
Especially with
about like the airlines and stuff. People were talking about like flight attendants.
Pilots. I think Delta pilots went on strike.
The pilots that was over the summer when I was interning. That was they stood outside, and I forgot which airport it was, but pilots in full gear stood outside and they refused to go into their planes and fly their planes. So, you know, I feel like right now there's just so many of them going on. I wouldn't be surprised if it continues and then gets to the point where a lot of them end, quote unquote, before it gets to the point of like, hey, it's usually just like a threat to, hey, if like, you know, if you don't consider like our wants and our needs, like we're going to like XYZ is going to happen. So a lot of it like ends beforehand, but you know, they don't get fully what they're asking for. So now it might just turn into, all right, this is it.
Yeah, this is what this is the package deal that we want.
It's either this or
no work.
Or you choose.
Do you think
could it backfire? Sure.
Well, not even backfire, because I mean, like, it's no surprise that especially when you're dealing with industries like the airline industries.
I was going to say, when it comes to like when it comes to like pilots or something like that, like airlines, there's also a shortage of pilots.
Yeah.
So
Delta just removed certain requirements. You don't have to have a college degree now to become an airline pilot.
So when I feel like in those instances, they could be very successful. But when you're working at like, you know, if you're doing like retail, right?
So you're talking about the skilled laborers are going to have an advantage compared to unskilled laborers.
Because typically the way that people will kind of like look at that, they'll be like, oh, well, okay, if you don't want to do it, I'll find someone else who will.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like someone like a pilot, hey, if you find someone else who will, what else are you risking?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I have for you is to kind of counter that a little bit. A lot of these unskilled laborers have a direct involvement with the general public, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people see when the quality of what they're asking for goes down, especially in a service industry, in the service economy. Do you think that there's any chance that maybe people are going to start to notice, right, when, you know, their barista is changing every 3 days because there's currently a strike going on, and whoever is the owner, if it's a corporate Starbucks or maybe it's managed privately, that they're just like getting rid of whoever wants to unionize on them, and they're just replacing them with whoever comes off the street and wants to do it? Or
I will say, people will 100% notice that, because people have noticed that. Yeah. Do I think people will care? No. I think most people are going about their daily life, and I don't think they even notice half of those things. But on the flip side, I do think there will be some people that will care. But so like whether or not people care, that's like usually like, how many people care about politics? How many people vote? Who can? Right? Like not many people do get involved in these types of things. People are usually like, if it, unless it directs me particularly, I don't care. There's very few people that care about the world, you know, very few people that are interested in politics, and the people that are interested in politics, 9 times out of 10, there are people that just care. And so I feel like in general, people wouldn't care, do care, but also the quality of things going down. Like to answer that question, quality of regular items, I feel like has decreased. Over time. Are people complaining? Yeah. But is anything changing? No.
But this isn't just the quality of regular items. In a service, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your coffee, there's a very big difference between whether you get the right cup of coffee or you don't. you get a good cup of coffee or you don't.
But what
that
are you
is a
gonna do?
direct effect. You're not going to go to that Starbucks anymore. You're going to go to Dunkin' Donuts, right? You're going to go to the other guy, and maybe the other guy has.
But what if you're living in a small
unionized.
town that just has one coffee shop?
You probably don't have a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay, but
but like
there's that, like, if there's only just one like Dunkin' that's right next to your job, now you got to go out of your way and like take a different bus to get to
do you
a different
see
side of
but do
town.
you see any possibility this might negatively impact massive corporations to the point where they could perceive some change?
I don't see it. Like, I feel like
Maybe
that
we'll
might
just-
last as like a Twitter trend that might be
Yeah.
like, oh, everyone like boycott like Starbucks for, and that's gonna last like
No
a day
one
or
was
two. That's what
boycotting
I'm
them,
saying. No
yeah.
one's gonna do that. It's collectivism. It's just gonna be like, oh, like repost it on your Instagram.
Did you ever use collectivism in any senior theses of your own? Did you
Um,
ever collectivism?
I
like
don't
that term, collectivism.
collectivism. I didn't reference it in my senior thesis, no, because my senior thesis was 21 pages long, and I
Collectivism.
could not have. I could have written so much more. Saying I'm gonna write a whole book about, because it's my own theory. Anyways,
She's a theorist.
I am a theorist, and I proved my theory correct. Well,
Of course,
hopefully I don't prove my theory correct because it's very grim. I just knocked on wood. But for those of you who didn't see, but what else was I gonna say? It was very important.
Something about collectivists and how everything goes away after a few days.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like people will care until they don't, and most people really don't care. I think the people that will care are the ones that are being directly impacted, the baristas that are working. It's going to be the actual people that are losing their jobs because they're seeking labor unions.
Mm-hmm.
What you will see with Starbucks, Starbucks like fired a whole bunch of employees that were seeking labor unions. Some of them were successful in like getting unionized. Others are still fighting for it. Yeah. So, I don't know.
In 30 seconds or less, do you think that there is any pro or con of, do you think that the railroad workers got something out of this? Or do you think this is an example of how big business and the government are in bed together and they're conducting business on their own?
I am saying I think they got something out of it. I think they can definitely go for more.
Okay.
How about you? In 10 seconds or less.
I personally agree with you on that statement. I think that they lost a lot of power based on the government stepping in.
Look at us agreeing
on Hotheads, the final episode. We have agreed
final
on
episode.
Something.
Okay, I didn't realize.
Maybe we'll come back in 2 years and we'll do a little episode about
years.
whether labor is really how labor's sitting now.
Yeah, or we come back like a year later and it's like, oh my gosh,
we were so wrong.
I didn't realize it was at the top of the hour, but I did just want to say thank you, Jack, for
executive producer, please.
Jack. Sorry,
hold your applause.
He came onto the show. It was like a very last minute decision for him to come onto the show last semester, and I'm glad that he came. There's no one else I would rather be doing this with. So thanks. Jack is graduating, and
please don't cry in the booth.
Maybe like a week or two. I'm not gonna cry. It's fine. But I do appreciate you coming onto the show and staying on it, and you made it a lot more fun for me. So
this has been a great show.
I think so too. I think this episode maybe not the best one. Well, I mean it was good.
Because you were just really sad that I'm leaving in 12 days.
I love how you count he's gonna and next week you're gonna be in 12 hours. It's gonna be like
listen, the moment that we're at 72 hours, I'm starting a clock.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, thanks for being here.
Listen, it's been a pleasure. This has been great. It's been great talking to our viewer, and James in the booth has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Thank you, James. Cam, you should give this guy a promotion. Yeah, that's all we have to say, guys. It's been a pleasure. Unionize, industrialize, and elect people who you think are good people. That's all we have to say. That's our synopsis.
We'll see you in 2 years.
See you in 2 years, guys.